trying to get an airstrike over on that opposite side. Copy.
What's up everyone, Tom from the Airsoft headquarters here, and welcome back to the channel. Today, we're gonna do another pistol overview, review, gonna be more of a review. This one is gonna be about the ASG CZ Shadow 2, and I personally have some problems with this. Now, this is gonna be me personally having ergonomic issues, control issues, so on and so forth. Overall, I still think it's a really good pistol. In fact, Carl from the Airsoft Arena may more highly recommend this compared to me based on his ergonomics, his controls. So if you guys want to see his thoughts and his opinions, maybe in a little more positive a light, then you can go check out his overview video on the Airsoft Arena's channel, which we'll link here. Now, I still think that this is a really good pistol build. In fact, this is going to be one of the more higher end CZ pistols from ASG. We have the ASG CZ 75s, the PO9s, the Shadows, and this is going to be part of the Shadow 2 series. While we may not have all of the CZ pistols, we do have a good selection here at the Airsoft headquarters retail store. You know what? Let's go up front and let's show you some of the other CZs that we do have. So obviously we have the Shadow 2, which we're going to be doing our video about. We also have, because this is kind of like a CZ 75 SPO1 type of style. So we have the other Shadow 2 here, which is utilizing an all black and then a blue accent on the frame there. We have the CZ 75 SPO1, which is slightly different type of slide assembly, similar ergonomics as far as the grip system goes, a little bit different controls, and obviously the bright orange and texture. This is actually using like a polymer rubber stipple, really good controls, and the orange trigger obviously there. For the CZ 75 SPO1, they do a little more basic of a model in all gray. Here we have the CZ PO9, which is similar height as far as a slide, but this one is different because it has a polymer frame, a little more basic, lower profile ergonomics on the side here, and is a flat base. Now what's unique is that these guys here are going to be CO2 powered, and they're going to be full blowback. We also have two other types of green gas CZs. So we have a CZ PO9 in all black. This is going to be part of the sport line because it uses a little bit more basic as far as internal parts and components. So I would not suggest utilizing CO2 magazines on this guy specifically. And then we have the sport line in the tan coloration here. Now they do make some CZs that are going to be a little more enhanced internally, and you can utilize the same CO2 magazines on the green gas ones, but for the green gas ones we have here, not recommended. But these are the CO2 CZs that we have, and then the two green gas ones. So let's go back into the studio space and like break down the actual Shadow 2. So the CZ Shadow 2 is going to be more based off of the CZ 75 platform. So it is going to retain a full metal frame assembly and a full metal slide assembly. So overall, this thing has a pretty good heft to it. It is very heavy. And because of that, it does have a lot more reliability, much more durability compared to some of the other manufactured airsoft pistols. Now, as far as on the note of reliability, there have been plenty of accidental reviews as far as durability notes goes. The most popular one that I have noted is the Swamp Sniper video, where he accidentally lost his CZ PO1 inside of his swamps at Balak Airsoft. And then he talked about the story of maybe a month or so later of losing it in the swamp. He got a metal detector, ended up finding it buried in the mud. It still retained CO2, He dropped it into a puddle, splashed some of the mud off, and was still able to play with it. So that goes and showcases very well some of the durability of having a full metal slide and frame assembly and just how well this system is built. And it is built very, very well. Now that's kind of, in my personal opinion, where the pros end. Well, it also has a very, very good accuracy and consistency. But what doesn't help is the controls and ergonomics of this pistol specifically. In my opinion, the controls are way oversized. They're just not correctly placed. And again, that may be something that I myself am just not adequately holding. I 100% can say that for me, how I hold this, it doesn't work out very well. Me and this pistol, not well fitted at all. But that's why I'm doing this video for you guys. So let's say, for example, you want to pick up this CZ Shadow 2. You got the box here. It is pretty well built. Inside the box is the instruction manual, the original packaging for holding this, make sure it's protected in transportation, a small little Allen screwdriver paired with a big Allen screwdriver, a thread protector system, and a small box of ASG BBs. And that is everything that's in the box. As far as what the instruction manual is going to go over, obviously read it for yourselves, obviously. And then I'm going to go over that with you guys here. So you have your three, well, out of the box, 2 parts. You have your CO2 magazine, and then you have the actual pistol itself, and then you can disassemble the slide away from the frame to have 3 total parts and components. We're going to start with the pistol overall and go over the externals and then some of the internals. So starting off, obviously full metal slide and frame assembly. So up towards the tip here, we do have the federally mandated orange tip. It's bright orange, it's threaded. Now, of the airsoft pistols that are on the market, the only 2 pistols, really 2 pistols that I would most highly recommend for usage and usage with a tracer unit or mock suppressor would be the ASG CZ platform or the Elite Force / KWC manufactured 1911s. Those 2 pistols, this one and this one that I don't have right now, those are like the only 2 that I would be like, yeah, tracer units, go ahead and throw them on there. There's no functionality problem. Other manufactured pistols, they can work, 100%, they can work, but maybe not work that well. Now, the threading on here is pretty tight. They do put a lot of paint on the very end here. So once you start to thread that tracer unit or mock suppressor on there, it's gonna be very, very tight. So you may have to work it back and forth quite a bit in order to get that suppressor to actually lock on. And you're gonna start to create markings where the threads are wearing together because there's so much paint on here. Obviously you do have your thread protector here. So if you do go out without a mock suppressor or tracer unit, you can just throw that orange tip over those threads and your threads are going to be protected. So then going back from there, we have the metal slide assembly, which it's a metal slide assembly. It's really, really nice. And it is paired with a very fast, but not a heavy recoil spring guide rod. So if I hit the slide release here, it sends it forward pretty quick, but it's also just light enough and just short enough to where I don't need any additional force coming backwards. So it's very easy on the CO2. We do have a very thin slide as far as the height. Not that it's thin in metal, but it is thin in height, which means that there's less overall material that needs to be moved backwards. Obviously, less resistance means there's less gas that's getting used up, which means it can cycle that much faster. So this actually does have a relatively fast cycle rate because of that shortened height of slide. And I think that's a really, really good performance system, especially if people don't want to like mess around with their pistols too much. They just want to get something out of the box and it's fast out of the box. And this guy is really fast, very crisp. On top of the slide, we do have your front fiber optic red sight. And obviously red, if you guys have watched the channel long enough, is a little bit harder to pick up in dark environments. I would have liked it if it was green, but they put red on here for whatever reason. Just your regular rear iron sight. So you do need to put that fiber optic in the post on the rear of the iron sight. What's really cool is that you do have front and rear serrations. So in handling this and shooting down at the arena, I have done the front serration grab in order to pull this back. I've also gone backwards with it. The benefits and the pros and cons with this, if I need to do a gross motor function as far as clearing chambers or trying to work BBs out of there, whatever, I grab it from the back of the slide and I do gross racks, versus if I need to put in a new magazine, I need to see if I need to rack it or not, I'll have the magazine out, grab it from the front here, pull backwards, and then by pulling backwards here, I can see into that hop-up unit chamber, and then I can see if there's a BB in there or not. So that's how I do front serration grab versus rear serration grab. And you can obviously hear how fast that slide is cycling just by hitting the slide release. Super fast. On the slide itself, you do have your CZ Shadow 2 9x19 and the little CZ license here. This is an officially licensed product, but there's no other markings on the slide itself. Going down to the frame, it's a full metal frame, and this is a thick, heavy frame. On the left-hand side here, we do have our slide release and we do have our thumb safety. So when we have that slide backwards / racked and we do have the hammer backwards, we can press up on that thumb safety and it's gonna knock it upwards and it's not gonna fire until we come down and then that hammer falls forward. And you can only hit safety when the hammer is back. Just like with a 1911, guys, please don't try to force your safety on if the hammer is not back, okay? More than once I've had to fix 1911 because they've forced the safety up. A very, very large slide release, too large of a slide release. And I'm gonna break that down much later. And it is not ambidextrous, so you just have your right hand operations. But as far as that thumb safety, it's on the left and right hand side. Not exactly sure why, but there it is. The front of the frame itself, we do have the stickers on the side here. 1 jewel, made in Taiwan. They're stickers, they pull off super easy. But on the bottom of the front of the frame, we have just a single slot for your flashlights. A little weird given how much tactical rail space there is. I would have thought that there would have been way more rail space, rail serrations in order to put different attachments, different flashlights. If you've got the Streamlight TLR1 or like an O-light or do I have another pistol light up here? I do not. But they will lock into place, they'll sit in place and they'll be right where they need to be, but that's kind of it. That's the only position that you can mount this flashlight. So you're kind of SOL as far as having accessories available for mounting to the frame itself. A little weird, but that's how they made it. I would have preferred to have, I mean, look at all that wasted space for not rail. But what do I know? We do have the metal trigger here, and this is going to be a curved, standard CZ type of curved trigger, but what is very noticeable, very unique is the fact that there is going to be a trigger reset or wall adjustable system. So you're not changing the length of pull, or let me rephrase that. You're not changing how short the trigger pull is, you're changing how far the trigger itself goes. For example, you have this actual adjustment here and it goes to the very back of the wall of the frame itself. So it's not going up into the body of the frame, it's going and hitting just the back wall. So I have the screw here maxed out as far as it can go without having to impede the action of the trigger. So I can get that as short as I can get it without messing any functionality up. So what we're doing is we're just maxing out how far the trigger goes before it engages the hammer system. So if we loosen that up, the trigger travel goes much farther backwards. So we have the hammer reset, which means that if we release that trigger, there is supposed to be way less take up before we have the trigger reset, where we can then re-engage the hammer, short reset, re-engage the hammer. It's not changing the actual length of pull before getting a shot. You get what I'm saying? So it's a different way of having an adjustable trigger without having like a true adjustable trigger. Hey everyone, quick interruption. If you really do enjoy some of the content that we are producing, please consider hitting that subscribe button, leaving a like, leaving a comment down in the comment section below. Anything to do to help the algorithm work in order to push these videos. My initial goal, and I'm gonna leave a goal for you guys as well, is that if we can get the YouTube algorithm to like us enough to push videos in order to get enough monetization going, the very first YouTube build that we're gonna get is going to be for steel or aluminum targets in the case of airsoft that we're going to be able to put up around the Airsoft Arena so that we can make cool, fun videos of us shooting targets. We can leave them out for players to shoot and impact as well, but that's going to be something that we're going to let YouTube and their silly little business pay for. That's something that I think that everyone will enjoy. Everyone that's going to be local will enjoy that as well. So if you like the idea of doing that, leave a like, hit the subscribe button, leave a comment, tell your friends about it as well, and let's make this happen. Enjoy the rest of the video. So, really cool functionality. I've gotten up to 7.7 rounds per second firing with this maxed trigger system, which is fast relative to a stock pistol. And I'm just doing regular trigger pulls. I'm not sticking my finger in there and trying to just wall bang the ever living shit out of that trigger like some Beretta guys do. But 7.7 rounds per second, I think that's respectable. I think that's a pretty good number. But you guys obviously might be able to do better. I don't know. I don't know how fast your fingers are. And then going backwards from there, we have our magazine release, which is so freaking fat. And again, we have the advertisable, adjustable magazine release, which we're gonna break down in a second because I'm not quite in agreement with this trigger or this magazine release adjustment per se, okay? We have a really big beaver tail on the very back of the frame here. I really like that. I like having the overly enhanced beaver tails. That means that for the larger palm guys, not like myself, you can get your hand as high up into that beaver tail there, which the higher your grip is, the less recoil is felt, the better you can manage control of that pistol. For real firearms, obviously with airsoft, there's not a whole lot of recoil, so we can kind of have a little bit looser of grips. But I like the fact that you gotta try really hard in order to get your hand up high enough to where if that slide comes back, it's gonna bite it. Like you gotta have really bad hand grip on this pistol if you're going to induce slide bite. And you gotta induce it, man. So the actual texture of the grip here is like a diamond pattern, but it's like a curved diamond pattern, so it's a little bit different. It's a little too smooth in my opinion, and it's not rubber and it's not plastic, it's still smooth metal with the CZ Shadow 2 logo on the actual grip itself. I wonder if these are actually interchangeable with other CZ Shadow 2 grips. That'd be a really, really cool experiment. Overall, it's a really comfortable grip, but I do wish that it was like the other SPO one, the orange one that we looked at where it was like textured. That one was a really soft one, or not soft, but that was like a proper textured grip. I like that one the best. But we don't have just texturing on the sides here. We also have texturing on the front and the back where your palm and your fingers are gonna be gripping as well. So you've got a really good grip stance set up inside of the grip of the pistol itself. So overall, really, really good. Now we have the magazine itself, and already I've kind of banged this magazine up quite a bit, and I've not done a whole lot of shooting with it. So if you do plan on getting this, just take note that on this magazine specifically, it does wear out on the corners of the magazine itself pretty quickly. This holds a magazine capacity of 22 rounds, which is a really respectable capacity. I mean, anything as long as it's double stacked should have a really high capacity count. What's cool is that the bottom plate here, which we do have the extended plate here, so that way it can handle that 12-gram CO2 canister inside of the grip here, and then have enough space in order to regulate that CO2 pressure. So overall, we have very consistent readings as far as velocity and really good expansion of gas when we're shooting this. Really good efficiency with this magazine. So I'm really happy. But the +2 extension base plate actually doesn't extend the capacity of the magazine. It just makes it so that the actual cap of the magazine can extend out a little bit to hold that CO2. So keep that in mind as well. Now, I'm not going to show you how to reload the CO2 just yet because I want to have some dry fire gas inside here, but in order to take that base plate off, take this follower that's on the bottom of the magazine, see the top, bottom, the bottom magazine, pull this down, and that's going to be the retention tab for the base plate here. Now this base plate does get a little loosey-goosey over time. That's just one of the things that just naturally occurs with this. Do be careful, this is a plastic base plate. So if you do drop it, it will shatter and it will break. So please be careful with this base plate, okay? Excellent, and it just slides in like that. Now, that is overall the very end of the external type of setup of this system. We're gonna talk about the internal system. You may or may not notice if you read the instruction manual, but there is a tab on the frame and there's a tab on the slide. It's cut in so that you know how far you need to pull the slide back. Just meet those two serrations together, push on the other end of the frame here, take that slide release tab out, and your entire slide assembly comes apart. And that's how you disassemble the frame from the slide. Now, what I really like about the CZ platforms is that they're so basic. I mean, the less stuff you have going on, the less it's gonna go bad on you. So I like the fact that everything is super basic, super minimalist. I mean, you can't get much more basic than this. And I like that. That way it cuts down on cost of manufacturing, it cuts down on cost of having to get replacements, and all of the thicker, heavier stuff, way harder to wear down or break. Overall, really like that system. Oh, and if you didn't know, the CZs are double action. I don't like when people do that, but you can do that. It gets pretty annoying here. And then we have the slide assembly here. Like I said, really thin as far as the height of the slide itself. Really thin. They kept it as lightweight as possible, which awesome. It makes everything super smooth, super fast. So we have the blowback unit housing. If you guys are familiar with other gas blowback pistols, you may notice that there is not a cap on your blowback unit housing. On the CZs, there are, especially this CZ Shadow 2, where if we take the recoil spring out, which this guy gets uber tricky. There we go. You gotta kind of work it. And then this guy should come up and out. And there is your outer barrel and your inner barrel and your hop-up unit. So you may notice on the slide here, as I pull this blowback unit housing down, this cap doesn't move, which means there's no parts or components from the hammer assembly down here rubbing up and just wearing down those blowback unit housing parts and components, which is so nice. That means that this is gonna retain itself for longer periods of time. I really hope that Carl will actually show you his CZ, because he's had it for a number of years and it is still like, it still runs. It still runs really, really, really well. So I hope that he uses his as a bed to show you guys just how long these guys can last and how well they last as long as you maintain them. So overall, those are the internal parts and components of the slide assembly, the frame assembly. Super minimalist, really easy. Your hop-up unit is here. So you have a flat head on the very bottom here. It's very tough. There are serrations on the side. It's very tough in order to try to get your finger on there and try to move it. So a lot of times you have to use a flathead tool that they don't provide, that you will need to get yourself. So get your flathead, make micro adjustments, small adjustments if you're trying to adjust to different BB weights, because I did max this guy out for, not max it out, I set it for 2/8 and it does really well with 2/8. It holds 0 very, 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 very well. So make micro adjustments when you adjust your hop-up unit. So you're going to reinstall everything here, making sure that the arc of the rainbow of the white buffer here is pointed down because that's where it was when I took it out. Slide everything back together. I like to just make sure everything slides together appropriately by going all the way back and then bringing it back forward where those serrations meet. Holding that in place and then sliding, oop, never mind, push that in, go back, and it clicks into place. And then basic functions test, pull the slide back, push up on the slide release, push down on the slide release, watch everything go forward. Really basic functionality test, because it's just super basic parts components. So we have the CO2 inside of here. We've only fired a couple of shots through it, and I know that there are no BBs inside of here for you safety Sallies, so we are all good to go. So, a couple dry fires for you. Couple dry fires, really good controls and whatnot. Now, this is the issues that I have with this pistol, and it's all based on the ergonomics. Magazine release, it's huge, it's massive. So if you are someone who likes to press the palm of your hand into the pistol, I thought for a second it was gonna go off the table. I want it to just remain on the table. If you press your palm in, then you're hitting the magazine release by accident. It's happened to me a couple times and I've sort of half corrected how I hold this model specifically. So in order to control the functionality of the pistol, I'm now pressing with my thumb against the top part of the frame here. Now you may notice that that is directly in line with the slide release. So what happens is I'm either pressing down on the padding of my thumb, I'm pulling down on it by accident, which results in continuous fire even when there's no BBs. Or if there are BBs inside of here, I'm pressing up on the slide release by accident. So the first shot I was pressing down and then I pressed back up, or I'm pressing up and it's locking the slide back even when I have BBs. Roll the video when that happened to me twice. Okay. See, that's exactly what I'm talking about with this pistol. So, based on my results and how I shoot with this, the only way that you are able to effectively shoot this pistol is one-handed. Just point it out and I'm pressing down the slide release so I can try to get multiple shots. That way, nothing is touching the slide release and nothing is touching the magazine release because they're so fat and so big, you can't have anything near them. If you have a flashlight attached, just keep that shit on, bro. Or hold it like this. Just to make sure that there's no material touching the slide release or the magazine release. And obviously those are based on my results, how I hold pistols. Everyone's gonna be a little different, but this does not control well in my personal opinion. Now, I said that there was something called the magazine release adjustability. There is. So if you come in real close, real tight here, you'll notice that there's a large plate on the top of the magazine release here. That is because you can actually place the angle. Notice how it's oblong in shape. You can adjust how that oblong shape is positioned. Why? I don't know. In my shooting, I have not noticed any advantage or disadvantage to having that adjusted. The only thing that I've had as far as an advantage by messing with the magazine release here is if you take the plate all the way off, which it's not supposed to be all the way off, but if you take it all the way off, there's just enough material there to where you can rotate the pistol in your hand, hit the magazine release, and the magazine slides out without, and I can go back to like my regular shooting stance or my shooting grip without hitting the magazine release. So me, I would take the magazine release plate off and just run that little stubby nub underneath there. So someone took my tools in order to take and remove and adjust how that magazine release comes on and off. So we'll hit it up in a minute. A couple of additional notes are the CO2 efficiency when it comes to shooting this. So with a fresh CO2 canister inside here, we are able to get about 110 total usable shots. Now the last 10 are kind of a little half velocity, a little gassed out, but the entire system will still function, will still sling BBs. Obviously you're gonna be a little lower, but 110 shots, that is really good. Really good gas efficiency on a CO2 system. I was really impressed. So overall, this is a really good system when it comes to gas consumption. Now, something to keep in mind is overall, the first 10 shots are averaging about 286, 289. So it's gonna be a lower overall velocity with .20s shooting through a chronograph. And that's been tested multiple times just to make sure that we have the correct velocities. So it is a little bit slower of a shooter. Now, like I said, this thing does have really good accuracy and consistency with .28 gram BBs, which, you know, a little bit heavier when it comes to a pistol slide length of inner barrel. So at about 65 feet, we're able to hit like a small soda can like this. Granted, this is coffee, but we're able to hit this pretty consistently at 65 feet. Here we are at 50 feet. Don't tell me, oh my gosh. I hate hitting that. Again. It's a great shooting pistol, but the ergonomics. That's what I think about the ergonomics. This here is about 100 feet. Typically, I don't go 100 feet. And I was trying not to press up, but we got a ding. I'm gonna load this back up like a maniac. And that was my palm again. Well, it was the right direction, but it was just a little too much. Oh my, I can't win with these ergonomics. Anyway, that's what we got as far as distance shooting. Not quite paper target accuracy, but kind of ran out of paper targets again. So it has really, really good consistency. It's very little deviation as far as left to right. With hop up, there was a little bit of deviation as far as how that hop is pressed, but as far as left to right, no inconsistencies. It was very, very good, very consistent. So overall, this is very, very good stock out of the box functionality pistol. However, the controls. The very last thing that I have for you guys is showing you the two Allen screws here, or Allen tools. So the smallest of the smallest one is going to be for adjusting your trigger here. So you can't use the long length of it, you have to use the short length here, and you have to do very small adjustments here, and it can be very, very, very finicky. Do note that over time, if you are a strong trigger squeezer, you will start to deform and wear away at the surface behind where that trigger applies itself. And I'm gonna get a close-up of that because, again, very little use overall compared to like regular players. So in the long run, that's gonna deform a lot very quickly, especially if you are a hard trigger puller. I'm a little bit lighter on my trigger squeezes, so please keep that in mind. The large Allen screw here is going to be for that CO2, insert, exert, whatever. So you can use a quarter in order to tighten and loosen the cap here. They conveniently supplies you with the Allen tool here. Now this one still does have a little bit of CO2 pressure, so we're gonna let this bleed for a minute. We're gonna loosen it up. Not a whole lot of CO2 left, luckily. So with that in place, we're just going to loosen it up like so until it falls out. Out falls your CO2. If you do have the CO2 stuck, just bang it against like a hard surface here. Your palm sometimes will work, but just be careful not to scratch your good table up. Throw out the old CO2, insert the new CO2. Now the hard part is that with the cap here, the line at which you need to put the cap on actually sits, and I'm going to use the small screw Allen tool here, sits right about there. So a lot of people think that they need to screw the cap on vertical or parallel to the angled plate here, and that starts to strip the threads very quickly, which is not what you want to do. You want the cap to sit parallel to the length of the magazine here, as long as you don't drop and lose it. And a lot of times I will put this magazine like this so that I can come in from the side here, perfectly parallel, and meets, it starts screwing in. Super easy, super peasy. Just please don't try to tighten it like in this orientation, because that's when you start to strip things away. And that overall is the functionality of the CZ Shadow 2. There are a couple of other colorations of this model. There are the regular CZ75s, which are much more basic in overall construction. You have the CZ75 Shadow SPO1s, which are slightly different, not much different than the Shadow 2s. And then you have the much more modernized CZ PO9s, which I really like. The CZ PO9s are only different because they're utilizing a polymer frame and not the metal like the other CZ pistols are utilizing. So that is what we have as far as like a review of the CZ75 Shadow 2. I'm going to not recommend it that much due to the ergonomics that I personally have. Obviously, if you have good controls with this, if it's a good pairing with you, if you like the features that this guy has, like I said, I'm reviewing it more highly on the performance aspect because it is a very high performing system. Very good gas efficiency, very accurate shooting results. Functionality though is lacking in my perspective. And obviously if this works for you, it works for you. And I'm really happy it works for you. That is all that I have for you guys on the CZ Shadow 2 here. If you do have any further questions about this pistol or other CZ pistols on the market, put them down into the comment section below. I'll do my best to answer them, but we are all done here. So you guys take care, stay safe, stay positive, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care.